I'd love to take you through a few things that I've discovered as I've prepared the first song, A Shropshire Lad, which I think give us a good guide for what the rest of the cycle holds. When I first began to speak to Philip about the piece, he said that it had evoked a much more tonal harmonic palette than he would normally use. And I think the key to this really lies in the texts that he's chosen, mainly taken from A.E. Housman's collection, A Shropshire Lad. Now, these poems became famous in evoking this iconic and almost mythical green and pleasant land, the rural England before the great cataclysm of World War I. And they give us this sense of being stuck on the wrong side of a fence, looking back at this rural idyll we can never recover. Now, how does Philip evoke that, musically speaking? Well, he uses some very simple devices in some really ingenious ways to just wear away at the harmonic certainties and to just give us that real sense of ambivalence and unease and ambiguity. One of the first ways that he does that is through what I would call tall chords, the sevenths, ninths, elevenths. So we take the basic unit of the triad, it's B minor for instance, we stack another third on top, and another third on top for the ninth, for the 11th. Sometimes he'll stick that right in the middle to give us a lovely crunch like this. But this basic unit for him of the sevenths recurs again and again, and he uses it as a sort of accordion that he expands but usually contracts in varying degrees to just play the whole range of emotions. So we begin on what's called a half diminished chord. So we take this triad, we squish the top degree up one semitone, so we get this. We stack a third on top. I think of this as the could it get any worse chord. It's pretty desperate. Well, if you squish the top note down one more degree, you get the fully diminished, which I think of as, yes, it just did. So we begin, could it get worse? But the way that Philip spaces out the notes through the voices, we don't necessarily get that concentratedness. We get a sense of space, but again, that unease. So this is where we start. Then we have the downward chromatic movement. That's another constant feature throughout the piece. So we get the B flat minor, a little movement up to C, a little wafting sort of melodic gesture upward. And then here he uses another of the devices, the sort of harmonic shift by a third, which gives a real sense of dropping us into a sudden and sort of jarring and foreign harmonic land. So let's just go back to that G minor chord. And then we come here with a passing tone. So just listen to that huge journey, even those first 4 bars, before the voice even comes in. And then when I do come in, there's this real sense of hollowness and space. It gives us a lot of open fifths, fourths later, stacked on top of each other, and so it's open, but it's spacious, but quite hollow. It's quite empty, and so he plays with this sound world as well. It's quite old, but again, it's not necessarily a happy place to be. So when the voice comes in, we have into my heart. And then, in the next phrase, we get 2 devices at once, and we get that downward chromatic movement that I was talking about, so we get in the accompaniment this. And then in the voice on top of that, we get what's called appoggiatura, so literally a leaning in Italian, where you get repeated notes across the bar. From yon far country. And this happens again and again. And an appoggiatura will almost always clash with what's underneath. And so we get a real tension and then a bit of release. So put those two things together, and then we get this wonderful sense of kind of lethargy and sort of twisting and downward, almost gravitational pull. So we get from yon far country, another shift to a distant key, blows. And then listen here, so we just do these little sort of shifts by thirds. We have little shifts from major to minor, and then we also have these lovely downward fourths, sort of right in a row. Combined with the appoggiaturas. So again, he's playing this whole sort of, if you will, like emotional cloudscape, this whole shifting pattern here. So let's just take that from the bar before. And then on hills just there, we get this very strange chord, which is, it's a D, but we have an added flat 4. So it's really quite a jagged sound, and that comes back later. But for the moment, we just get it in that form as a kind of statement cut off. And then the voice takes that same note and then goes on to what first sounds like the statement that we've heard before. What spars, what, and then we change here. What forms of those. Isn't that a great clash there? Just even listen to that. Forms of those. And then we get an exact restatement of the first bars. So let's see if you hear anything else this time around. That's all right. Now this phrase starts the same, but we end very differently, and this is where he uses another of his tools in the toolkit, a major-minor shift. So let's hear it through and then I'll unpack it for you. That is the land of lost content. So we've not only gone from an A9, we've not just gone to an A minor, but he's brought us all the way down to an A flat minor. It's a much further distance, and in the context, just magical. It's one of my favorite moments of the piece. And why? Well, he said it, and that is the land of lost content. In fact, it's so good, let's go back and hear it again. That is the land of lost content. One of the only major passages that we get in the piece here. I see it shining plain. And then from here, we've had this lovely glimpse of hope in this really resplendent F sharp major. And then he pulls the wool right up from under our feet, going from here, again, back to the second chord of the piece, all the way back down to a B flat minor. Up a semitone, a little waft of hope, for the happy highways. that, we get some parallel fourths, or what I call quartal chords, that are sort of stacked on top of each other, with sevenths stacked on top of that. So just listen to these strange chords here. We get this. Actually, let's try this. And so very, very different than the rest of the piece. And then with passing tones, and again, the appoggiaturas that really dig into those and then release. So in the context, let's go back to the happy highways. And then the highest jump that we get in the opera voice into this lovely series of appoggiaturas. So again, into one of these ambivalent chords. And then we end in the same sort of place where the voice began, this very open, medieval place, without any thirds, at least in the first and the last chords. And why? Because we're saying we can't go there anymore. We've said the happy highways where I went, this huge explosion of grief that ebbs away, and then just into this real place of desolation, of being able to see it, but knowing that you can never go home. This is where we end.